Welcome. Today, we're diving into the pretty amazing world of small-scale mushroom cultivation. Seriously, we're going to explore how you can take what most people consider waste and turn it into a fantastic protein-packed food source. Let's get right into it.
So you see a question like this, and you might think, yeah, right, is that even possible? It sounds almost like magic. But that's the absolute core promise of mushroom farming. You're basically a modern-day alchemist, transforming stuff that gets thrown away into something incredibly valuable and nutritious. So how on earth does that actually work? Well, when you look at the advantages, it's really compelling. I mean, you're not just using waste. You're getting a ton of food out of a really small space. And the turnaround is so fast. We're talking as little as 3 weeks from start to finish. Plus, the mushrooms themselves are just loaded with protein and vitamins. And here's the best part. When you're done, the leftover stuff, the substrate, it becomes this amazing conditioner for your garden soil. It's a perfect closed-loop system. Okay, so if we're going to grow mushrooms, we first have to understand them. And that means we need to pull back the curtain on the secret life of fungi. They're not quite like the plants you might be used to growing in a garden. They play by a different set of rules. Now, this right here is probably the most important thing to get your head around. The mycelium, that web of tiny white threads, that is the actual living organism. The mushroom that we see and pick and eat, that's just the fruit. So think of it this way. The mycelium is the apple tree, and the mushroom is just the apple. Our job as cultivators is to grow a really healthy tree so we can get a great harvest of apples. Out in the wild, it all starts with these tiny microscopic spores floating around. If one lands on a good spot, it sprouts a little thread. And if that thread just so happens to bump into another compatible thread from another spore, they fuse together. And then you get a mature mycelium that can make a mushroom. As you can imagine, it relies a whole lot on luck and chance. But see, we're cultivators. We don't like leaving things to chance. So we basically hack the life cycle. We skip the whole unreliable spore phase and start with a strong, healthy, pre-grown mycelium called spawn. This gives our mushroom a massive head start against any competitors. So what exactly is spawn? You can just think of it as the seed for growing mushrooms. It's a starter culture of pure, contaminant-free mycelium that's ready to go. By mixing this into our substrate, we're giving our chosen mushroom such a powerful advantage that it can just take over its food source before any nasty molds or bacteria even get a chance to show up. So if spawn is so critical, the next question is, well, how do you make it? This part of the process is a bit more precise, kind of like working in a clean lab. But don't let that intimidate you. It's a skill that any serious small-scale grower can absolutely learn and master. It really just comes down to 4 basic steps. First, you take a tiny, clean piece of tissue from inside a perfect-looking mushroom. Then, you cook up a sort of nutrient-rich jello for it to eat. That's the agar. Step 3, and this is crucial, you sterilize that agar to create a totally blank slate. And finally, in a super clean space, you introduce that little piece of mushroom to its new food. And let me tell you, that sterilization step is completely non-negotiable. It doesn't matter if you're using a simple oil drum steamer over a fire or a fancy modern pressure cooker. The principle is exactly the same. Use heat and pressure to kill every single competing organism. You want to make sure that only your mushroom mycelium gets a chance to grow. Okay, so once you've got your spawn ready to go, you need to have a place for it to grow. So now we're moving on to building the perfect home for our fungi, and it's all about creating a really clean, really controlled environment. Now, a mushroom house doesn't need to be super complicated or expensive. You can see from this design, the key things are all about control. You need shelves to get the most out of your vertical space, you need some kind of ventilation to manage fresh air and CO2, and you need a good door to keep the outside worlds, well, outside. And speaking of keeping the outside out, hygiene is your #1 defense. It's everything. Since we're not spraying chemicals, prevention is our best and really our only tool. A simple setup like a double-door entry acts like an airlock. It dramatically cuts down on the number of insects and unwanted spores that can just wander into your grow room. I really can't say this enough. Any bit of debris, any contaminated bags, any of the old substrate, all of that stuff is a potential breeding ground for pests and diseases. You have to get it out of the growing area immediately. A clean farm is a productive farm. Period. All right, we've made our spawn, we've built our clean farm. Now for the really exciting part. This is the final journey from a bag full of white mycelium to a beautiful, fresh harvest. Okay, so after we mix the spawn into its new food source, something called the spawn run begins. This is where the mycelium just grows and grows, spreading through the whole bag. And here's a wild fact. During this phase, it actually loves high levels of carbon dioxide. The bag is basically holding its breath, gathering up all this energy for the next big step.
So once the whole bag is colonized, it's our turn. We, the growers, get to give the signal. We tell the mycelium, okay, it's time to make mushrooms. And we do that by changing its environment. We might drop the temperature, crank up the humidity, and most importantly, we flood the room with fresh air, which drops the CO2. All of these signals tell the fungus, hey, conditions are changing, it's time to reproduce.
And this is the reward for all of that work and preparation. The mycelium gets those environmental signals and it pushes out these absolutely beautiful fruiting bodies. This right here is the whole process, from that tiny piece of tissue all the way to a healthy, delicious harvest. Which brings us right back to where we started, and it leaves us with one last really important question. I want you to look at the world around you. Think about the straw, the sawdust, the cardboard, the coffee grounds that we throw out every single day. Now that you've seen how this all works, what waste in your world could you transform into a future harvest? The potential, it's literally everywhere.